There's only one candidate left in the GOP primary race who can mathematically secure the nomination on the first ballot of the convention vote. That candidate, of course, is Donald Trump. In response to those numbers, Ted Cruz and John Kasich have formed an alliance, pledging to each other and to voters to split the remaining states in regards to their campaign's efforts, with Cruz focusing on Indiana and Kasich focusing on Oregon and New Mexico, just to try to prevent Donald Trump from securing the delegates there. Take a look.
If you can't beat him, join him. That's reportedly the strategy being employed by the Ted Cruz and John Kasich campaigns ahead of Indiana's May 3rd primary, as the two Republican rivals will join forces in a sense, dividing efforts, with Cruz zeroing in on Indiana and Kasich focusing on Oregon and New Mexico.
Joining me now is actress, spokeswoman, and host of the Andrea Kaye radio show, Andrea Kaye. Andrea, great to see you.
Oh, so glad to be back here.
All right, what do you think of this Cruz-Kasich alliance? Kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, it's funny you should use the word pledge, because everybody today is kind of making the joke that it was like a shotgun wedding. You know, you've got these two guys, two lovebirds, if you will, from opposite sides of the tracks, right? And they come together, they have like a clandestine affair kind of behind the scenes, and then they come together supposedly at a shotgun because they're going to have a love child, right? And I think in this sense, they really thought the love child was going to be a ticket for the two of them. And then next thing we know, it's like a day later, Kasich is already like talking about getting it annulled. So it's like
they don't even seem to like each other, or respect each other's political views until this moment.
Right, and that's what I mean by the opposite sides of the tracks, because you've got this guy who supposedly has branded himself as like this hardcore conservative, you know, principled conservative constitutionalist, and he's having this like clandestine love affair with a guy who's
who's expanded Medicaid 5 times in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, open border amnesty guy.
Right, and who won't come out and say religious liberty means you don't have to bake a gay wedding cake if that's in line with your religious beliefs.
Absolutely. So it's like, who thought that relationship was going to last? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then we get up today and then we find out, well, you know, sure enough, that marriage was annulled. And now we've got a new relationship that's brewing, right? Between Cruz and Fiorina.
And very strategic time on that announcement. Coincidentally or not, and I would say not, just very short time after Donald Trump's foreign policy speech.
Yeah, and what I thought was really interesting about his speech, in contrast with what Cruz was doing, is they're both kind of trying to take it towards a general election. And, you know, Trump was very powerful. He really took it to Hillary. Part of what Cruz has been saying is that he's the only guy that can beat Hillary going into the general election.
He's been saying that since day one.
Right. But yet you look at these alliances that he's made, and it signals that he knows that he's so weak. It's an admission that he's so weak that he can't win on his own. He's got to form these alliances like it's like another analogy, the TV show Survivor. The first one doesn't work for him. People even came out of the polls in Pennsylvania and Connecticut and other places and said that because of that alliance, they actually switched their vote. So then now you've got another show of weakness with saying, hey, I can't win it on my own. I got to bring Fiorina in, you know, to help me win not just the nomination, but take it to Hillary in the general election. And so his own argument that he's the one guy who can beat Hillary doesn't make sense. Contrast with Trump's foreign policy speech, in which he took it to Hillary. He said, we had an ambassador who was murdered and we had a secretary of state who misled the nation. Powerful.
Yeah, very powerful. And he said it's just going to be the first of many speeches. What do you think is going to happen in Indiana, though? Because there's been talk that Ted Cruz announced potential running mate Carly Fiorina in time to help sway the voters in Indiana, right as Kasich, who's supposedly in this alliance not supposed to be campaigning in Indiana, he's still encouraging, you know, voters saying, hey, don't forget about me.
Right. Well, you know, does that ever really work? I mean, just because somebody supposedly has polled that they like Kasich, does that mean they're really going to take his marching orders? We saw already coming out of the polls the day after that alliance with his 5-state landslide for Trump that it didn't work, and it didn't work in Cruz's favor. In terms of Fiorina, I actually think that the play was not in his mind to help him with Indiana. I actually think that he thought the play was to have her give him California. And I think that what he does not understand is that those of us in California, she's not a winner here. If he is counting on her to deliver California, he can forget about it.
Well, historically, vice presidential candidates don't make a difference. Presidential candidates always pick people thinking that, oh, they'll be able to help me in the state of California, in the state of Florida, with women, with minorities. But historically, it doesn't change the support for the actual presidential candidate that significantly.
Right. And getting back to your question about Indiana, that's a tough state because historically, I think the polls coming, well, we can look at polls in general with a little bit of a jaundiced eye coming out of 2012. And I think Indiana is particularly difficult to poll because the state is so varied from the north versus the south. But I think that he's even weaker today going into Indiana, CRUZ is, than he was even a couple of days ago, even though people think, well, you know, it's kind of close to Iowa and he won Iowa. I really think that what happened is I think we've seen a real significant momentum shift. In fact, there's even articles today, Fred Barnes from Weekly Standard said CRUZ's campaign is completely collapsed at this point. And so really Fiorina, to me, is really just throwing, you know, what the life preserver off the Titanic and hoping she's going to help him swim.
All right, well, let's see. If Trump wins Indiana, then he's pretty much the presumptive nominee that he's claiming to be. He claimed today that he thinks of himself as the presumptive nominee.
Right.
Everyone's acting like that. But what do you see happening in the case that he does not win Indiana or that he does not secure those 1237 delegates? What do you see happening in a contested convention? Does Trump come away with the nomination? Does CRUZ? Does Kasich? Does an outsider? What happens?
Well, I think it really depends on how close he gets to the 1,237 delegates when we go into the convention, because we are a party of rules. Liz, are we not? And we know that these rules have been around for a long time. Yes, it can be confusing with the states. Absolutely so. I think that a poll came out today where more than 50% of the voters have said they are concerned that the system is rigged. They want it looked at going forward. But I think the party will be in a tough spot if he gets really close to the 1,237. I think that he might just go ahead and win it on the first ballot and the party just coalescing and uniting behind him. If he comes in really significantly short, loses in Indiana, loses in California, I think that there will be renewed momentum for CRUZ, and I think we might find ourselves getting into a second, if not even a third ballot.
Right, and a lot of people, you and I were talking about this right beforehand, but a lot of people, I think, fear that contested convention because we fear that the Republican Party is going to be fractured, going to be broken, that all this infighting, we really are going to divide down the middle, not be able to unify behind a candidate, not be able to defeat Hillary Clinton. This isn't the first time the Republican Party's had a contested convention. This has happened 10 times in our history, 10 different times. And 7 of those times, the candidate who was the front runner going into the convention did not emerge as the nominee. Someone else who had fewer delegates was nominated and went on to win.
Absolutely. And I think that's why what I would encourage both of the campaigns to do is start pivoting to policy, start taking the argument to the Democrats. Because when we get to the convention, one of the things that we need to do is come up with a party platform. Yes, the Rules Committee will convene and they'll look at the rules for this year's convention, and that will play a part in terms of what happens. But we need to come up with our party platform, something that we can coalesce around. And if we're really wise as a party, we can take a look at history. We can take a look at what we face going into the general election, and a Democrat Party and liberalism and all that means. They are really trying to transform us into a socialist society, and we as a party can't let that happen. We need to remember who we are, and we need to rally together.
Right, and I think that's very well said, because ultimately, even if you support CRUZ, even if you support Trump, and the other candidate wins the nomination, either one would be so vastly superior to Hillary Clinton, so vastly better for our country. You got to put aside your minor differences and just get behind the one that's going to be best for America.
Absolutely.
But while we're talking about vice presidential things, or we were before, let's talk about Bernie Sanders for a second, because rumor has it, word on the street, is that he's looking at Senator Elizabeth Warren as possibly his vice presidential. I'm looking at a reaction already. His vice presidential pick if he were to secure the Democratic nomination. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that his choice is it's hilarious. I mean, what is he trying to do? Do a CRUZ arena? He's trying to pick another woman like CRUZ did today. I mean, why in the world would he pick her? Okay, I get that she's a socialist. She's the woman who famously said, oh, you business owners out there, you didn't build those roads. You know, we built those roads. But unfortunately for us, Liz, is so many Americans actually believe that. They've taken over our education system and our media, and they actually have Americans who don't understand the value of a free market economy and a free market capitalist system. And actually, we have a majority of Americans now who like the idea of socialism. So while we're laughing here about her, Pocahontas, the lady who, you know, lied and pretended that she was a Native American in order to get special treatment and goods from a university, in some ways it's kind of fitting for the times that we're in, is it not?
Because everyone's pretending to be something else to get a vote. Who does she appeal to, though? Because she doesn't have the universal name recognition that Hillary Clinton does. She's actually not very widely known outside outside of the political elite or outside of the politically aware. She's not someone that you would look to and say, oh, there's a good role model for women. She doesn't draw you in for being a powerful woman. She's not conservative. She's more extreme even than a lot of Democrats. Like you said, she's a socialist, and she admits to it, probably why Bernie Sanders suggested her name. But who is she going to appeal to?
Well, I think she's probably going to appeal to the 20,000 people or so that show up to every Bernie Sanders rally. The average, what was coined as and dubbed as the low information voter, who basically gets all of their policy positions on bumper stickers on the back of cars. You know, those are the people that are buying into this. And as I said before, the left has successfully taken over education systems and our media. And so when people are told today, you're going to get free this and you're going to get free that, they actually believe it. So I think she does have that appeal in terms of the free goods, the attracting to the entitlement society. And I think it kind of works in her favor that she's not as well known as Hillary Clinton. I think that might be an advantage.
People aren't as afraid of her or her policies. And you're right, people don't look it up. They don't hear free stuff and then look to history books to see what happens when governments promise free stuff.
Yeah,
Andrea, it was great to talk to you today. We are out of time.
Oh,
thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Donald Trump swept all 5 states in the primaries last night. Hillary won 4, leaving just 1 for Bernie Sanders and leaving Kasich 1 for 46. That's next with my uncle, Kevin O'Brien.